Hello, I'm Candace, and this is Sex, Love, and Lies, an adult discussion of everything about relationships. We come to you live via a Google Plus Hangout on air every Tuesday at 8 Central Time, and 24 hours a day on my YouTube channel, Candace773. This show is for adults only, and we strongly encourage your discretion when watching these discussions. The topics and language are not intended for minors. You can talk to your kids about sex, love, and lies, but we will not. And now, please welcome a guy who thinks it's erotic to use a feather, but kinky to use the whole chicken, my co-host, Paul.
Thank you, Candace. You know, after last week's show on oral sex, I am sincerely worried about what I've gotten myself into. But first, let's welcome the folks on our panel. Lance is here to join us again. Lance, how are you?
Wonderful tonight. Glad to be back.
That's great. We're glad to have you. And Scott, you're a regular. How are you tonight?
I'm doing great, thank you. Nice to be here.
Great. Scott is going to be checking in from time to time with the folks watching on YouTube and letting us know some of their comments from the chat. Our special guest on the panel tonight is Greg Atkins, who is an expert in what we're going to be talking about tonight, and we're going to be asking him some questions, interviewing him a little bit, and getting his feedback in the conversation. Candace, I am so scared to ask, what is the topic tonight?
Tonight, the topic is sex toys and masturbation.
Oh, someday we're going to talk about hand-holding or something, but all right, let's go for it.
How to begin?
So, well, basically, I want to talk about women and sex toys. First of all, women, sometimes women don't feel comfortable or open enough to even pleasure themselves. And this could be a result of, you know, their religion or their culture. A lot of times, I even felt, you know, a little, I guess, embarrassed and ashamed when I was younger about doing it. And I think a lot of women feel that way too. But sex toys, once you get into it and once you get into welcome more things, sex toys, you know, you have to feel more comfortable with yourself in order to, I guess, embrace it and you know that it feels good and it's okay to do that because our bodies are meant to feel good. And a lot of women, you know, have struggled with that, especially in relationships. You know, a lot of times, if you're not comfortable with yourself, then a lot of times women aren't comfortable telling their partner what they like. And, you know, some women, I've even met some women that never even had an orgasm. They don't know what it's like to feel one. So I think that puts a lot of stress on the relationship itself when that happens.
That is a great insight into this, and there are certainly a lot of anxieties and fears about talking about things like this and, you know, what it means to use toys by yourself or with a partner. But that's one of the reasons that we like to do this show, is to have a serious discussion about adult topics, not worry about the language that we use necessarily, but, you know, also not try to be too titillating. And that's why I think that this show is gaining in popularity and success. Scott is letting me know that there are 8 people already watching on YouTube, and we're delighted about that. We want to welcome you to the show. Greg, what kind of feedback do you get about people's anxieties with regard to a subject like using sex toys for masturbation?
It depends a lot on the individual. A lot of people I encounter, because I also have a lot of tenure in the kink community as well, instead of just being sex positive. It's kind of your standard deviation, though. Lots of women are, oh, I'm ashamed, I can't do this. It turns out, you know, they have a trunk full of stuff under their bed. Guys, of course, no, I would never do that at all whatsoever, and you realize that their left arm is much larger than their right arm for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is that people do feel afraid to talk about this because the idea of self-love and everything else seems to be this almost foreign concept nowadays. Even when we're more liberated than ever. So it's interesting because people will actually deny, and then once you kind of approach from the standpoint of, oh, hey, it's not that bad, I do it too, this is what I do, all of a sudden everything just changes. They start just unloading all these secrets. It's fun. It's definitely informative.
So you've gotten a response very similar to what Kinsey got. Once he finally decided to start talking about this subject, he found that there were literally tens of thousands of people who needed to talk about it.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And the thing about it is that it deals in the psychology of people. You know, they want to feel they're amongst like-minded company. They don't want to seem like the odd man out. So then you have someone like myself who comes along who has absolutely no problem being the odd man out. It really helps out because they feel they can confide, and you learn a lot. You find out that, you know, this person you thought maybe they didn't actually do it, yes, they do it, and they involve not just one toy, but 2, 3, 4, you know, how many ever it takes to actually get them to where they need to actually go. And it's interesting to watch them share that information out.
Yeah. Candace, does an attitude like Greg's help it to be a little freer to discuss it with a partner, or just in your own experience to say, hey, I'm going to do this?
It's you know, you like it a lot of things come into play with this. They really do. And you have to be open and know that it's okay to talk about this, because really, you know, statistics, what they show is what people tell them. And I mean, I've read that, I mean, kids under the age of 2 have known to deliberately, you know, do things to, you know,
touching themselves, exploring their genitalia, etc.
Like Kinsey, yeah, exactly. So,
Lance, you and your wife are newlyweds, pretty much, right?
Yeah, we were married in November, so yeah, we're still within that.
Oh, congrats.
And neither of you is 21 anymore, so I would think that maybe you feel a little comfortable talking about some of these things. Is this anything that you two have talked about, or, if you don't mind my asking, explored?
Yeah, we have. Maybe not for the reasons that would be. You know, with partners I've had in the past, we've used sex toys with some people. Other people, when you meet them, you know, no, I never want to try that, and you don't come back.
Right,
you kind of go with the person that you're with. We have a sex shop not too far up the road, and we keep joking that we need to take a trip up there and go do some purchasing. And you know, and honestly, we're going to do that one of these days. We just haven't got around to it. But specifically in my case, I had cancer last year. I had anal cancer, and with the radiation and the chemo, it left me pretty well non-functional to date. So somebody's sex toy is going. You know, so I have a limited repertoire of things I can do to please her at this point, and you know, maybe that'll come back, maybe it won't. But I think in our case, you know, a variety of you know, some additional tools to bring to the table might kind of spice up what's becoming a rather one-dimensional sex life.
Yeah, I hear you there. Scott, are people chatting over in YouTube? What's going on over there?
We're down to 6 viewers right now. We haven't had any comments or anything back yet.
All right, well, that may be an indication of the sensitivity of the topic, but Greg, what's now? You know, Lance mentioned a sex shop not far away from where he lives, and I know that in the past I have, with a committed partner, gone into a store that sold videos, sold things that, you know, the antiquated term was marital aids, you know, sex toys, whatever you want to call them. Is this becoming a little more mainstream?
It really depends on where you're at, actually. For example, I live in Portland, Oregon, actually, and right where I live right now, there's at least 2 or 3 shops within about a good 5-minute drive. The previous place I lived at, which is a little city near Portland called Clackamas, there were 2 within walking distance, actually. But it's become more mainstream, yes. It's become more of a viable option in places especially like Portland, that are very open and very free. Yeah. But in other areas that are more conservative, actually, it's still becoming fairly more open, because people are starting to realize that, sex is not a linear process anymore. There's a lot more to it.
I'm in a smaller Midwest town, which is, kind of smack dab in the middle of the Bible Belt. In our particular town, they've run off everyone that's come in and set up anything that's even remotely risque. So we have to drive up to the next town or two that's a little bit bigger and has, a few more vices. So, I wouldn't say it's a universal experience. I mean, we're still, it's kind of hit or miss in this part of the country.
Yeah.
And I hear you there. I know that in the past when I've gone into a shop with a partner, our level of comfortability with being there and our level of comfortability with exploring options was reflected back by the store staff. If we went in there giggling like a couple of teenagers, we weren't taken seriously. We might be pointed to a section off to the left. But when we have said, we're here looking specifically for a vibrator, maybe a particular model was suggested by a coworker of my girlfriend's, and we've been able to have some really legitimate conversations. One of the things is a breakdown of different kinds of toys. I mean, there are dildos, which are inanimate phallic objects meant to represent the penis. There are vibrators, which have a small motor, battery-powered motor in them, that the intention is to stimulate the clitoris. But these are not things that are just limited to females. I mean, there are also there's the I'm not trying to give anybody a free plug or anything like that, but there's the fleshlight, which is intended to simulate rather a vagina for a man's penis. And dildos and vibrators are not necessarily limited to the female vagina. I mean, they could certainly be used by a man or in a couple with the man.
Have you ever heard of the auto blow?
No, but we are now all wrapped with attention.
It's to act as if you're getting a blowjob. It's a machine, but it's
well,
now,
and that does kind of key what Paul is talking about, the fact that that's one of the liberations right now, is that there are more toys coming out for men, but they're not just an external variety, the fleshlight being the classic example. For men, actually, they're looking more internal. More men are becoming comfortable with the idea of using stimulation to actually hit their own G-spot. And so it's been kind of interesting because there's a lot of prostate toys out there now. There's a wide variety. In fact, there's one that's very, very popular. It's called the Aneros. It runs about $45 or so, depending on where you actually get it at. But this is actually a toy you can use that it actually massages the prostate. It also massages the small area between, the actual perineum area. And so a lot of men have actually used that and had very satisfying orgasms, number one. Number two, even more interesting, they've actually had hands-free orgasms on their own by just simply flexing, their sphincter muscles to actually maneuver this thing in and out. So yeah, sex toys have taken a massive leap forward. And what also has helped with it, of course, is what we all love dearly at this point, is the internet. It's actually allowed people, you don't have to go to a store anymore. Now you just type up, you go to, Extreme Restraints or JT's Stock Room or Toys in Babeland, Good Vibe. I mean, I could bore you to tears of different ideas. So that's actually allowed people to be more free. People now tend to go to stores for two purposes. They go to get a hands-on feel for what the actual object is like,
Right.
Or they're going for more video-related stuff, like they want to go to a booth or a glory hole or something similar. So as everything expands, some things actually contract in relation, and I think sex toy stores are one of those things.
Now, with a toy that is designed to stimulate a man's prostate, my assumption is that is accessed rectally. Am I correct about that?
Yeah. Well, there are some toys that they have like a C-type shape, where it still is rectal, of course, but most of the vibration or everything else happens externally, so it creates like a field of sorts. There's not much out there in the way of external vibrations. Women have something called the butterfly, which it looks like a butterfly. It usually gives like a good clit massage. You can kind of use those to sort of kind of do prostate massage, but it's not very effective.
Yeah.
I call that the
Let me.
rat.
Hey Scott, would you ask Ronaldo? Hi Ronaldo, thanks for watching on YouTube. Would you ask him to expand on that idea of comfortability? Is he talking about the toy itself?
He just posted that, and I haven't heard anything else from him. I will ask for more confirmation on what he's trying to understand from us.
And when you, Greg, when you talked about another area of stimulation, I'm assuming you were referring to the region between the base of the scrotum and the anus. And what is that region called again?
The perineum, actually.
Would that be the P-spot?
Yeah, also the P-spot, also as the taint, because it taint dick and it taint ass.
Right.
That's, as far as men go and using sex toys.
I didn't even know I had one of those.
I'm doing every day. A lot of men have actually, one of the things that actually helped out was a lot of men took vibrators that their partners or women would actually use, and they found that during things like blowjobs, sometimes applying that in that area actually helped them have a faster orgasm, number one, and number two, a much more satisfying orgasm because they're fully expressing everything out of their prostate. They're actually clearing it of all the fluids and everything else that goes along with it, actually.
And the tissue of the penis, although not visible, actually extends past the testicles kind of into that area. So there's certainly the same nervous stimulation that's available, right?
Exactly. And it all kind of leads in. And plus, with vibrations, I mean, it extends and permits 360 degrees anyways. So, but yeah, it does actually go into the nerves and everything else a little bit.
Very good. We'd like to welcome Sean Startup. How are you, Sean?
Hey, doing fine. How are y'all?
Sean, I want to let you know everything is fine tonight. We're just talking about hand holding and nice, just sending handwritten love notes and flower petals. Okay, I'm totally kidding. We're right back knee deep in it just like last week, Sean. We are talking about sex toys and masturbation. We've got folks watching on YouTube. Scott, anything going on over there?
It's pretty quiet. We're up to, we've almost doubled our people watching now.
Cool. Excellent. Thank you very much for that update. We want to welcome everybody who's watching on YouTube. This is a live broadcast. Candace, what do you got?
I want to ask Greg, have you ever encountered a guy that feels threatened or insecure when their women, partners, girlfriends use sex toys without them?
A long time ago, before I really got into the whole kink and sex positive thing, yeah, that was a lot of my experience. Was a lot of men took it as an affront to their manhood. Why should you have to use that? What is this about? As it became more and more ingrained in the kink community, though, and also the sex positive communities, and was able to actually talk in a different way, I found it became less and less. Not necessarily among kinksters, of course, because we're all pretty well set, but even the more the term we use as vanilla people. We told them that it was okay, like, hey, it's kind of cool. They started opening up a bit more. The more mainstream folks like, well, it's not so bad. I don't mind it. I find it kind of hot. It began to kind of change a little bit. So a lot of it really depends on how you approach it as an individual. I mean, if you're like me and you're open, you don't mind talking about it, you find that people usually are fairly okay with it. In fact, they almost tend to encourage it sometimes.
Lance, what, if you don't mind my asking, what is that something that you and your wife are have talked about? And I'm not trying to make her feel uncomfortable or anything like that, but I mean, do you discuss whether she is engaging in masturbation apart from you? Is it something that you do together?
No, we have not had that discussion, honestly. I'm assuming, or I don't know what she does in her own time.
Okay, and that's fair. There's nothing wrong with that, and it's not about hiding or anything like that. It's just I've had partners in the past who masturbated on a regular basis. We also enjoyed very healthy, active companion sex lives. But also, I was aware that she was masturbating on a regular basis.
Yeah, I can't see that being something. And now, the question a minute ago was, do people feel threatened by that when a partner does that? As if they're inadequate in some way, and therefore the partner has to has to pleasure themselves to make up for some deficiency. And I don't feel that way. Maybe I'm not home and that mood hits, and if that's what she needs to do, then she should go for it. I mean, I certainly do if she's not around and the mood hits. It's interesting when nothing works. There's not a whole lot you can do. I can tell you that. But
actually, I would actually take issue with that.
Well, no, because in the sense that we don't have any aids or toys or anything in the house right now, so I don't have any means of any alternate stimulation at this point.
Actually, again, I will take issue with that because you've got 10 readily equipped and an 11th just kind of hanging out there. That's the thing. That's why sex toys and masturbation is a lot of fun because we're all uniquely equipped. We've already got most of what we need, number one. And then number two, a point that Lance had touched on, from Western town, hard to find a shop that sells toys. Sure, there's the internet. There's actually other places you can go to actually achieve what you're looking for. For example, you can take $20 into a Walmart or a Home Depot and make absolute magic there. So you don't need the traditional idea of what toys actually are. Now you can almost make it yourself. And it's fun. It's a hell of a lot of fun, actually. It's creativity in a whole new way.
Good.
Mr. Potato Dildo, huh? You just plug and build and
Something like that, yeah, to a degree.
And obviously with plastics and with latex, there are much more comfortable advances in those kind of phallic objects and stimulating devices. The history of sex toys can almost make you cringe when you think about things that were carved out of ivory or wood that were used in that way and did not have the capacity to vibrate, and the inventive things that men would use to simulate either vaginal or anal intercourse.
No,
go ahead.
Say having known a couple of RNs in the past, and you'd get those stories from the emergency room on the various items that they had to extract. People could be pretty inventive at times, that's for sure. I wanted to touch on something. We're talking about basically essentially vibrators, dildos, this kind of thing. But think about lubricants. For the longest time we had our standard KY jelly or whatever. Now you've got all these things with these the warming, the tingling, all these things that are supposed to enhance the sensation. Even things that maybe would make you more excited in the bedroom, but not directly related to stimulation. Blindfolds or handcuffs or whatever the case may be. I think those things also qualify as sex toys.
Yeah, and we're going to touch on that in just a minute. Scott, anything going on with our YouTube viewers?
No more questions from our YouTube viewers. We're up to 20 viewers right now live.
Excellent. Very good. And we're glad that you're all joining us tonight. Lance, you brought up an interesting topic there, and some of those things are very simple. It's not just the stimulating devices. It's the other things that we can bring in to make things a little more exciting. I can tell you that in a relationship that I had, there was a time when simply being a little bit submissive and allowing my female partner to tie my hands behind my back made a much more significant erection. She enjoyed it, I enjoyed it, and she was masturbating me and going down on me, and it really was a lot more exciting just with that little simple addition. And Greg, sometimes that's it, right? Sometimes it's just a little simple addition, and everybody gets a lot more open and free right there.
Yeah, it's something different, it's new, it's creative, so it gets you out of your comfort zone. But with respect to what you were mentioning, that also can lead into a process called edging, which is where you bring your partner to the edge of orgasm, and you don't actually let them orgasm. You kind of hang there for a little bit, you back it off, you do it again. You'll do it how many times feels natural or right for the moment. Yeah, you see how that increased build that tension, and one of that release, it actually becomes almost an exponential sort of thing. So yeah, so one little difference can actually make a world of difference, actually, and it doesn't seem like it's a big deal, but it really is, because you're actually opening yourself up a little bit.
I would say, especially if those things weren't, if it didn't become regular cookie cutter sex every time, where you do the same thing with the same toy every time, where there's some mix and match, maybe a little variety, or even surprise. The lights go out and you don't know what's going to come into the bed with you, and it would add a lot. And I think a lot of people, especially women that I've talked to in the past, don't get that from men. A lot of men are just in it for the quick get on top, do it, roll over and go to sleep thing, and they're not as creative or inventive as they can be. And I think a lot of women really wish they had a partner that was maybe more like they would like them to be.
Sure. Sure.
I don't know what women are doing wrong when they're teaching their sons or how the kids are growing up. That a lot of men have to be very selfish and narrow-minded. At least, the bulk of the ones that from women I've talked to, I'd say it's probably 60-70% of the married people you talk to, the women are not all that satisfied by the husbands because of that lack of creativity.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're going to talk about sex games now.
Sex games.
Well, you mentioned the first game, which is You Are My Prisoner. And
okay.
you tie your partner up. And with that is the whole excitement is feeling powerless. And, that's really where the excitement comes in. So, when you tie your partner up, it's erotic because you're his center of attention, and it increases the excitement for the partner.
Yeah. By being forced to give up that control to your partner allows them to heighten your own senses, but they can also do things like tickle you or torture you in other ways which you normally would be able to defend yourself against and fight back against.
There's a trust issue, isn't there?
And they can definitely increase arousal level for both sides.
Yes, definitely. Greg, did you have any sex games that you know of?
Let me see if I can distill it to you down. Well, to kind of tie into the previous topic, actually, is we're kind of talking about masturbation to a degree. One that's fairly popular in the kink community is called White and Blue. When I first played it, I played with a woman I met way back when I was still living in Oklahoma. This was actually a lot of fun. The agreement was we had 30 marbles in this bag, and a predetermined number. I think when we first did it was 7 were white and 23 were blue. The way it worked is that basically I'd go over, we'd do whatever, and I'd either masturbate or she would get me off, whatever. But I would get that point of orgasm, and usually what we do to make it interesting is we roll dice beforehand. That was how many times I'd have to get close to orgasm before I drew. So I'd get to whatever number it is. I would draw. If I drew a white one, I got to come. It was great. If I drew a blue one, yeah, not so much. I had to wait the next day to figure out what actually happened from there. But a lot of those edge and half games are very popular because they're very easy to do. There's not a lot to it. I mean, you don't need marbles. You can just pick a random number. You can go to like a random number website and just pick something and go. So that's probably one of the more popular ones. But there's also ones where you have to make decisions. Do you want this instead of that? Like, do you want to come now or come later? And you have to determine like what you're going to do with that. If you do it now, it's this less pleasurable experience during it, or if it's later, it's a much more prolonged pleasurable experience. Choices are always a big fun game to see what the person actually wants, what they're willing to give up in exchange for that.
Sean, Startup, what do you think about this?
I don't know. I've never really been big into the whole sex games or tying up thing, but
okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just more of the traditional, just get down with business, rock and roll, and boom, bam, done. Smoke a cigarette, do it again, or go do something else, go to work, whatever you're going to do. I don't know.
All right, very good. Scott, what's going on over in YouTube land?
Staying the same with the viewers, no more new questions. Ronaldo responded back that he asked that question because we used it in the forum earlier, or in the Hangout earlier, and he was just curious what it meant.
Okay, very good. Well, comfortability is not only would not only necessarily be with the object that you might be using for stimulation, but also the idea of being comfortable with the idea of using an object for stimulation or using a sex game. Candace, we've probably only scratched the surface here a little bit with Blue or White, and You're My Prisoner. What else you got over there?
Blind Man in the Bluff. And
Really?
This, you need a scarf and a necktie or a blindfold. You blindfold him. You leave him in bed or other place, and you proceed to ravish him slowly, and then you see however you like doing. And,
so
you call the shots. You're completely in control.
So he's not aware of what's going on and therefore might be a little more sensitive to try and get those sensory cues from touch rather than sight.
Yeah, it has two major effects. It dramatically increases both sensitivity and psychological vulnerability. And either one is a powerful aphrodisiac.
Greg, is vulnerability a big issue with these kind of things? Does that heighten the excitement?
At first, yeah, because it's something different and new. After a while, though, you kind of get used to that vulnerability, and it becomes less about being vulnerable and more about a repeated experience.
Okay.
But yeah, the first couple times, unless you're actually really key to what you're actually looking for, yeah, it is about being vulnerable. And the opposite is usually that it's not about vulnerability; it's about the fact that you finally get what you want, like the whole blind man, game and everything else. You've wanted that for a long time. It's not that you don't trust the person. You just always wanted to have a blindfold on so you can see what it does to your other senses. So it's a bit of both, but generally speaking, yeah, it is all about trust and giving up that bit of control and having to put faith that that person's not going to, come away with your penis in their hand or something similar.
Yeah, I would hope. I would hope not.
So no Lorena Bobbitt.
Yeah. Another fun game along the same lines as as Candace's game, actually, it's called The Bells. And another cheap little thing you can actually do, and what it is you take your partner, you don't tie them up, but you take these little bells that you can get like at Christmas time or any other, and you tie one to each extremity. And the rule is, the person who doesn't have the bells on, they'll do anything you want to, but they hear a bell go off, they'll stop and wait for you to get calm again.
Okay.
That was a lot of fun because it concentrates a lot of stuff inside. You have to all of a sudden start internalizing all this pleasure. So instead of physically expressing it by moving about and stretching and everything else,
Right.
you have to just kind of bring it into your brain and let it just sit in there. That one's also a lot of fun.
Okay. Candace?
The other one I have is Time Bomb, and that you need a clock or an egg timer. And how you play is you sit him down, and in a low chair, and with his legs have to be relaxed. And facing him, you straddle him with your feet on the floor, and slowly lowering yourself onto his erection. And with your knees bent at a 90-degree angle, you start by letting just the tip enter you, and then lower yourself inch by inch until you're allowing him full entry, all the way down on his thighs. And with that, it focuses on the...
Well, that'd
I
take up
did
a
not
couple
get the last part of that. It focuses on what, Candace?
the pregame show.
Oh, all right. All right.
The build-up, as it were.
And Greg, it sounds like something else where part of what is exciting about it is a little bit of a delayed gratification.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, sex is fun, but sex is actually fairly easy. There's not a lot to it. Whenever you prolong something, whenever you kind of hold that cookie a little further out, yeah, if you start increasing that desire over and over again, it's kind of like having an appetizer before a main course. It's good, yeah, but it's not filling. It's not exactly what you're looking for. So this is kind of the same concept. You reach a point where you're like, okay, I'm at a point now where I'm pretty happy, but I'm not quite ready to finish. So you use these little tactics to kind of keep building that desire up and up. And yeah, it's a hell of a lot of fun, actually.
So we have a comment from Ronaldo online. Do we want to bring that up and discuss it real quick?
Yeah, I just want to jump back to the idea of the sex toys in terms of stimulating sex toys for just a minute. The comment was that there was an interracial couple with a black woman and a white man, and this is something that certainly could come up, and a discussion about whether this is healthy or not is important. She apparently had a dildo that resembled a black penis, and the dildo was larger than his. Ronaldo was commenting that he was offended by that and wanted to know whether this was wrong or right. I don't know, Greg, if it's so much of an ethical or a moral issue like that, but is it an indication of insecurity maybe with the idea of using AIDS?
It plays into it, sure. A lot of it could also be cultural differences, or maybe he had a bad experience, previously where maybe he lost a girlfriend to, a well-endowed black guy or something similar. So there's a lot of odds and ends that go into it. So it can be any one of a number of things, honestly, from a trigger standpoint.
Okay. Well, that certainly helps. We're going to talk to Greg for a little bit about something that he has, and I want to see if I can put this up on the screen for everybody to take a look at. Sorry about this. I'm slowing down the show now, and I apologize for that.
While you're getting that up, I've got a quick question for Greg.
We're teasing you out a little bit. Yes.
Yeah, what's the question?
Greg, you were talking about prolonging the experience and the pleasure to a degree. Is it possible to go to the point where you've gone too far and they're not going to be able to finish up?
Yeah, that's actually referred to as a ruined orgasm, which oddly has its own fetish, where people can keep building and building and building, and they're not actually able to finally finish off. For them, for people who are into that, they like that feeling because for them, the prolongation goes much longer. Now, for most everyone else, it is that it can be bad, not damaging per se, but it can be kind of bad because it goes into psychological stuff. So all of a sudden, if you're not into that, you're thinking, okay, how come I can't come all of a sudden? I've always been able to come without a problem. Now all of a sudden I can't. So it's a fine line to tread. So for most people who don't know how to do it or they're new to it, start easy. Maybe one time you delay it, or maybe 2 times at most. And what you also want to do, and this is very important and something that should come up more often, is aftercare is especially important. After you deny your partner so long and they finally get off, you want a lot of physical contact with them, stay close, remind hey, that was really good what you did, this is really good. You prolong yourself for whatever reason, themselves, you, whatever. But you want to encourage them that they did something very, very good and very, very pleasurable. That way it minimizes the possibility they might have a negative experience from it.
I think that kind of positive reinforcement seems to be, for me, especially important, and I'm not sure where that's coming from in terms of my security in a sex life. But, the little pat on the head, a little scratch behind the ears, and let me know that I'm doing a good job certainly doesn't hurt.
Yeah, well, sex is a very nurturing thing. That's what it's designed for. It's designed to nurture us to be together, and in some instances, from a biological level to procreate, but it's meant to be a very nurturing, rewarding experience. It hits all these centers of our brain that lights up. If you ever see it like an MRI of someone having an orgasm, it's like a Christmas tree inside someone's skull. There's so many things going on at one point in time. So the nurturing.
Well, not only that. I mean, sometimes you think you're doing the right job or you're doing something the way that your partner would like, and that may not always be the case.
Exactly.
Sometimes that constructive feedback, can turn you to the light side of and help make the experience better for your partner.
Greg, I'd like to talk to you about something that you've written called the 5 Axioms of Kink Community Leadership. Would that be all right if we talked about that for a little bit?
Feel free.
The first thing that you had indicated was to be daring, and I hope that we've got it up on the screen there. Yeah, great. So tell us a little bit about being daring.
Well, the thing that is, a lot of kink communities will suffer from a certain kind of a myopia, where they get into a rhythm. There's something in the kink community called a munch. It's a social gathering It's used at a restaurant. It's not anything kinky. It's like a meet and greet of sorts. They'll get in these ruts where they sit there and think that the only thing you can do is have munches. Oh, we'll have to have a munch. We have to do this. We have to do that. And you only have this limited field. By being daring, what you do is you take things a different direction. For example, something I'm getting to do this upcoming Sunday, actually, is, yes, I'm having a munch, but it's something called Munch on the Max. And the Max is the name for Portland's light rail. It's our subway system, as it were.
Okay.
But instead of being in a restaurant just standing around in the usual, we're meeting up on this Max car to take a ride from one point in town to the airport. And then we'll go and do other stuff. We'll probably go to IKEA and do some geeky shopping. Maybe we'll get some lunch, things like that. But it's taking the time to make that one little tiny difference that makes it a unique experience, actually. So by you want to take a chance and start something different, it really helps out a lot. Portland is famous for it. We have lots and lots and lots of different things to do here in the kink community. So others can actually find the same thing.
Very good. The second thing that you had written was to be persistent. What is that all about?
The other is that doing things on a one-off occasion can be fun, sure, but if you want to actually really be a leader, you've got to have a certain consistency. For example, Munch on the Max, I did one last year, and I just kind of forgot about it until recently. Well, my plan is if it goes off well enough, I'll probably do it on a quarterly basis. Every few months I'll have one. As the popularity continues to increase, then we'll, of course, add more dates. Maybe it's every month or every other month or every week or something similar to that. But what you have to do, though, is be willing to set a schedule for it and then be consistent with that. Even if it means that you go one time and maybe only one other person shows up, well, one is still better than zero, of course. You have to make sure you always have that thing going to make sure people get into it.
Great. The third one was to be open, and that seems like a natural, but maybe we need to expound on that a little bit more.
On that, where that actually comes from is that there's something called an affinity group. They're like-minded groups of individuals, and they tend to pop up very, very quickly. And the thing about it is that you have to understand that your event, while you might have started it, your event is not always about you. It's about the community itself. So unless you start a group with a specific intent in mind, like I did, I started a group called the PDX League of Gentlemen. It was for male dominants who wanted to learn, well, for men who wanted to learn how to be male dominants, also be more gentlemanly in their ways. That was a very specific group. But being open with that meant that I had to also understand that, just being more than peaceful in your life is not the only thing. I had to be inclusive of transgender people. People are transitioning from female to male genders. Maybe I had transvestites. I had transsexuals. It was a way to understand that, I might start with this one goal in mind, but I have to be aware there's going to be other variations on that, and I have to keep that in consideration. So you have to understand that what you may start is not what it ends up as.
Sure. Now, when you talk about like-minded individuals, it could be something like that, where it's men who are interested in refining their dominance. It could be people with another particular fetish, like latex or bondage or something, right?
Exactly. For example, one of the groups here in town, it's kind of bouncing a little bit. It had a bit of a following, but it's tapered off. But to go with our topic, there's actually a group here that has masturbation mixers. They're the Portland Masturbation Club. And they have munches. They have social gatherings out in public places where they can kind of meet each other and get to know each other. And then every now and again, they'll actually have a little event where they go to someone's house or some other predefined space, because there's a couple of swingers clubs here in town where they're able to go. So they'll go, and that's all it is. It's just them sitting around watching each other masturbate. It's not about helping. It's not about hooking up. It's just like, look, there are 6 people in this room. We're going to masturbate. That's all we're going to do. And it works quite well.
Well, now, Greg, I've got my paper and pen handy here. How would somebody find out about something that's going on like that in their local community?
It really kind of depends. It used to be VBSs were the norm, and then adult bookstores. The big thing now, there's a few websites that really cater to this, but the biggest one is called FetLife. It's F as in Frank, E as in Edward, T as in Tom, and then the word life. It's billed as like a Facebook for kinky people. There's been lots of other sites in the past, like bondage.com, collarme.com, but they all kind of ran aground to the fact that they were trying to make money off what they were doing, and that really soured the deal. With a site like FetLife, it's more open. It really has democratized how people gather for this sort of thing. And so all you got to do is go, and usually if you just look around in various groups for your city or your area, you'll find a lot of stuff. And that's the other thing, and that kind of goes back to the previous point on the axioms, and also the current point that's up there, is that if there's something out there you want and it's not there, go create it. Just because it doesn't exist doesn't mean it can't exist. It just means that either no one's thought of it or that no one's felt compelled to do it yet. So don't be afraid.
Okay.
Go out there and just huck it and go for it.
Now, I can understand that some people might be concerned about putting these things up on some of the more mainstream social media, but do you think that Google Plus is a place that people could connect with these kinds of similar interests?
To a degree, yeah. In fact, I'm actually, I am working on a couple of projects to that particular direction. On FetLife, for the longest time, the nickname I used there was the Pretty Geek. And I talked about, my tagline was, why you like that thing you like. It was a way to discuss various things and really get a feel for what certain sexualities meant, or why do I like this particular thing. The other thing I'm working on is a more sex-positive channel that I'm calling, I believe I'm calling it Google Positive Plus. I can't remember what I'm calling it off the top of my head.
Okay.
But yeah, it is growing. I don't know if it's actually happened yet, and if it hasn't, I'm really surprised, but I'm sure there's already been live sex shows on Google Plus.
The fourth thing that you wrote about in the axioms of kink is to be you, and it seems like one of the biggest things is that we have to get things that are in our head in our bed, and
Exactly.
maybe be you is one of the biggest things.
Yeah, always be true to what you actually like. For example, there's things I've done where I thought it was a really good idea, and it didn't really attract anyone, but I still did it, just for the sake of saying, hey, I did that thing. I started this group, or I ran this idea. Whenever you're doing something you actually want to do and that you love to do, it comes through and it brings people with you. It may not be an immediate success, but it does eventually create some sort of success. And the more you enjoy it, the more you want to do it, and that comes through, and that makes more people at ease. That's the key to the whole thing.
The last item was to give back. What do we need to do to give back?
The thing about it is that while it's tending to actually reach a point where it's just basically you bringing in people, you want to give back in the sense that you want to go out in the community and start asking people. Like, once you reach a certain level of leadership and you're recognized on a certain fundamental level, you want to actually go like, hey, maybe you're having trouble starting a group. How can I help? Or, hey, what can I do to bring you into a group? Or what's your passion? What do you like doing? Going back out in the community and actually talking to them and asking a lot of questions and trying to fill those needs as well is very important, because you want to make sure everyone feels they have a part of the community, so they're not just some ostracized fringe member. You want to make sure that you say, hey, look, you're part of this too, and there's no reason why you shouldn't be coming on our little reindeer games,
Great. Scott, what do you got for us?
JC left a comment and question in the comments asking if it's wrong for a male to masturbate once a day.
Well, JC, I want to thank you for that question, and of course I want to continue to thank everybody who's watching on YouTube. And you know what? I think that we could throw this up to the whole group here. What do we think about this whole idea with morality and masturbation?
Well, I can only say for myself, I don't have any problem at all. I don't think of it in the moral terms, I guess. It's just something, it's a physical thing, it's a natural thing. And, if you're in the mood to do it and you can do it, and it takes care of, usually you want to do that. You sit down, you take care of business, and you feel better. And if that mood hits once a day, if it hits twice a day, I don't think that's a destructive thing.
It certainly doesn't make you a sex addict, that's for sure, or anything like that. No. I don't think there's anything wrong with the person.
I'm sure there's some circumstances under which it could probably be problematic, and with certain individuals. But for the average normal person who just is horny and just wants to get off, I don't think there's an issue there.
It seems to me that there might be behaviors that enter our thoughts, and there are other behaviors that are much more physiological. When we get hungry, we eat. When we get tired, we sleep. It's not like I'm bored, so I'm going to figure out a way to stimulate my penis or my vagina. It really is, this is what my body is calling for right now.
Exactly.
And so that's why people, with 11, 12, 13 years old who have absolutely no experience with this, there's been talk on the playground and maybe some sex education in school, but I think that's why all of a sudden, a hand goes to the genitals, whether it's a boy or a girl.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, it's a very natural response, too. I mean, at some point in time we learned that things touching down there feel good, and we want to recreate that. Now, the one thing I'm really curious about, as far as JC's question is concerned, is if he's seeking it from a standpoint of, is it morally wrong, or is it just wrong from a physiological perspective? That's what I'd be more curious to find out.
Okay.
Right. And he just left basically the comment, do you guys think it's wrong for Mel to masturbate one time a day? That was the only question.
Greg, why don't you tell us a little bit about it? I mean, is there any concern with doing it on a daily basis, or frankly risking injury, some sort of an irritation or anything like that, from doing it more frequently?
Well, yeah, I mean, there actually can be problems that associate with it. Now, as far as just masturbating once per day, just once? Come on, rice, spice, life and all, eat up. But no, from a physiological perspective, it actually kind of can. Because after a while, if you do it too often, which there's no set number, but you can do it too often, you get used to your hand, number one. So you're used to your own stimulation, and of course, you know exactly what you want when you want it. So as a result, other interactions may not go in the same direction, and they might not be as satisfying. Plus, your fantasies, you get them so dialed in that if you try to actually live them out, because you've got them so rehearsed in your brain, they can't match up. There's lots of things I have that are incredibly hot, and they're seriously mind-bending hot. But because I've thought of them so often in my head when I'm masturbating, there's no way in hell I'm going to be able to live this out, because it's down to they say certain things a certain way at a certain time, move their hands a certain way. It's an impossibility. So you can set unreasonable expectations. But that said, everyone's got a little different line for that. For some people it might be 2 or 3 times a day does that. For others, it might be 2 or 3 times an hour does that. It really kind of depends. You'll know better as you go along. But generally speaking, no, not much of a danger really for the most part, unless you want raw skin, which we learned that too. So.
We're gonna talk about not just women but men losing sensitivity from using sex toys too much.
Candace, you had said something about that last week, right?
I did, and I was. See, I used to use the rabbit.
The rabbit, that's right. That was the rabbit. And for those who don't know, a rabbit is a dildo with a secondary extension that would, I guess, massage the clitoris, and it's also got a vibrator in it, so that if you're using it with that thing on full vibrate, it's going to put a lot of stimulation in some very sensitive areas.
Well, they're rabbit ears, and it also has beads at the end. Some of them do. For really added pleasure. I never used them, but I was always concerned because there's a setting and it goes low to high, and I always use closer to the high. So I was always concerned because it feels so much different than a mouth or just a human body part. So I was concerned myself because 70% of women, they need clitoral stimulation. Normal sex penetration does not do it for them, and I'm one of them. And I have a really hard time having an orgasm with just penetration. I need something else.
Yeah.
And so that rabbit was, my husband made me get rid of it. He said, if you don't need it, you have me. But now I'm about to complain. I just miss it so much. And, with the rabbit, I was afraid that I was going to lose sensitivity, but the research that I found that you only lose sensitivity for a short period of time, and very rarely do you, lose sensitivity completely.
Oh, so your concern was long-term loss, like nerve damage.
Yeah, like nerve damage,
Yeah, no, I've heard of people, overstimulating to the point, and this was what we were talking about a few minutes ago, not being able to reach orgasm because, they've overstimulated. And I kind of thought that's what you were talking about. Long term, I don't think I've ever heard of anybody damaging themselves in that way.
Yeah, no, it's I researched and they said that it's very, very rare for anyone to suffer to that extent. It's just temporarily.
Scott, you had mentioned that men can also lose sensitivity. Is that correct?
Yes, especially if they're not careful, they masturbate too often, don't use proper lubrication, those type things. Eventually you can do nerve damage. Some people cause a loss as sensitivity through piercings and those type things also.
Okay.
That can cause nerve damage in those regions.
Okay. Very good. Do we have any final thoughts from the panel? Greg, is there, if we had to boil it down to one thing to remember, what would it be?
Have fun. I mean, that's what it comes down to. I mean, that's what sex is. I mean, yeah, it's got the procreation vibe to it, sure, but have fun. Don't be afraid to try something new and different, because something different, like I said, that one little teeny tiny change can be exactly what you need to have a more satisfying experience. So go forth.
Lance, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think we're going to run down to Walmart and visit the vegetable aisle, and then maybe this weekend we'll head up to the sex shop.
Fantastic. That's great. Scott, anything else from the YouTube viewers?
No more comments from YouTube. We've got 20 viewers currently watching live.
Very good. We certainly
We appreciate
appreciate that, and we'd love it if you join us every week here at on Candace's YouTube channel, Tuesday nights at 8 Central Time. Candace?
I want to thank our viewers, our panelists. Greg, thank you so much for
Absolutely.
giving
Yeah,
us
absolutely.
your experience and your knowledge. We really appreciate you coming by.
Sure, love it. It's a lot of fun.
Awesome. I hope to see everyone next week at the same time. And thank you, everyone. Thank you to the viewers, and thank you for everyone contributing. I know this is a sensitive topic, and not everyone is open to discuss these things as we are. And I appreciate everyone, the comments that the YouTube watchers left, and hope to see you next week.
Thanks,
Good night,
Candace.
everybody.
Good night.
Excellent. Have a great day.